Hey y'all.
It's Friday.
It's Friday. Happy Friday.
Friday Love Fest.
Yes. This is our thing.
I know, that was my hashtag.
Right. Oh, okay. So we're back again to talk about behaviors that are abusive, even though we may not call them that. And so today we want to talk about consequences and how a lot of times, like all actions have consequences, positive or negative. But sometimes we justify, to piggyback on like what we talked about last week, we justify repeating consequences or like what we call like perpetual consequences because of someone's action, and that is abusive.
And let's just talk about justice in general for a minute. Justice is one mistake, one consequence. One crime, one penalty. If you continue to get a penalty over and over and over and over again for one crime, that is injustice. We also would call that oppressive. We also see that in our systems all the time, which is just completely unjust. So we want to, and abusive, right?
Yeah.
You're totally holding a position of superiority over the person you are applying this injustice to.
Right. So
there's that.
Quick little ad. So like one of the examples that we talked about, like I think is really common, is, like if you're in a relationship with someone and that person cheats on you, I think like most people would say, oh, like that person was the abusive person. And so like however you react to them, you're justified.
Right. Which we kind of talked about.
Which we talked about last week. But the unique thing I think about cheating or something like cheating is that from now on in that relationship, you are now justifying a perpetual consequence of you not trusting that person. Right. So now I get to snoop, I get to look through all your stuff. I get to, ask you whatever questions I want to ask you. I get to know your passwords.
I get to give you crap every time you leave the house. Like, don't, fall on somebody and cheat today.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
I get to
verbally abuse.
Right. I get to talk to other people about the fact that you did this. If I feel like it. Like, it's whatever I need, right, to stay in this relationship. When it's like, maybe you should just not be in that relationship anymore.
Right. So we're saying if you're going to perpetually apply a consequence to somebody,
that's
this
abusive.
is where we disengage.
Yeah,
right.
That's abusive.
You are now becoming an abuser because you won't let them live. You won't let justice have been served. If they cheated and you said, I forgive you and I stay, you better forgive them and stay.
Yeah.
If you're not going to, you gotta go.
Right. And it's perfectly fine. I think it's perfectly fine to be in a place, maybe just temporarily, to be in a place where you can't forgive them. And so then you can't stay. So you don't need to feel the pressure of like, I have to stay, I have to make this work. No. There may be reasons that is not going to work for you, that you cannot stay and you can't forgive. And so then but you need to know that about yourself and remove yourself.
And let us be clear, if you want to stay, we're not saying you shouldn't stay. If you want to stay, stay.
Right.
But don't perpetually consequence them for the rest of the relationship. Exactly. Otherwise you shouldn't have stayed, because that's now you're abusing. You're becoming abusive.
Exactly. And just to remind you all, like we've talked about I think in our past couple videos, abusers abuse because there's some way they feel that they are not superior. So in this case, maybe you feel inferior because this person cheated on you, and it makes you insecure, and it makes you, feel all these things. It has affected your sense of self-worth. And so now, every time that it comes up for you, you feel like you need to do this thing to outwardly exert your power and your sense of self-worth again. Like, in order to boost that, now I need to exert some power and control over this person who did this to
every
me.
time I do it, I cut you down and make you inferior, and I take a position of superiority, and I feel better and more comfortable in this relationship. Red flag of this relationship is not healthy.
Yeah. That is abusive.
Right. Another example that I love, because I think it's relatable to most people, is a work example. A lot of times leaders are this way, right? You get an employee and they maybe mess up. They show up late to a meeting or maybe even two, and then you just peg them as that person, and you don't let it go, right? And you kind of always are anticipating and just waiting for them to make that mistake, and you're almost holding them accountable before they make the error, right?
Yeah. Or when their name comes up, it's like they could get a promotion or something, but nope.
Because remember they were late, and then they're always late. But they might not always be late.
Right.
Are you remembering the times they aren't late?
Exactly.
Have you made up your mind? And what kind of leadership is that? That's abusive also. And and our point is, in that same relationship, if you have that belief about them, if they are legitimately doing that, instead of keeping them and perpetually bringing it up or holding the one time or the thing over their head, disengage. Whether that means let them go, reposition them, find somebody else to be their leader, and engage with them in a leadership way, because you've got a bias that you can't let go of, but you've got to stop perpetuating the consequence. Or just check yourself.
Sometimes it is just us needing to check ourselves so that we don't keep punishing people. You know, we don't have the right to punish people in the first place, but to keep punishing someone because we feel whatever, like maybe I just need to check how I'm feeling and why I'm feeling like this. You know, and we talked about this, like we do the same thing with friends. I definitely have lots of friends who are late, who are always late, and I'm saying that with quotation marks, and sometimes they're not, but even when they are on time, we bring up the time that they were late, or we bring up, but you usually late. And so it's like they can't win. That's abusive. That's abusive. So if you find, examples, again, like, give us your examples, comment, share this with your examples of perpetual consequences that we've sort of normalized in our society, like
maybe that you've had
or that you've been like someone threw your way, or that you felt justified in throwing someone else's way. And like the key takeaway is, I think that or one of them is that yes, actions do have consequences. There are things that we do that will have consequences, but when we decide to perpetuate them and say, well, no, once you did this, that changed everything about how I see you and what box I put you in, you are now we're entering abusive territory. You don't get to do that. If you don't handle that the right way, if you do that and keep that person close and use it as an advantage, then it's abusive. If you have made that decision, because you have a right to an opinion, be clear, it's an opinion, and you choose to disengage with the information that you've gathered and the perspective you have on them, cool, you can disengage. But what you don't get to do is hold things over people's heads and label them and hold them accountable, but keep them. That manipulative behavior is the problem. And that is not you really being impeccable. Maybe you don't even have the information to be impeccable, but that's not you being impeccable about your intentions for that relationship. If you're at a point where you realize that you don't trust this person anymore and you're not going to be able to trust them anymore, then you do need to release them. You need to release yourself too. You don't want to be in a relationship where you can't trust that person. So then yes, it is on you to do that. It's also on you
ring on the truth.
when something happens, to check in with yourself and so that you can be impeccable. How does this make me feel? How do I now feel about you? And that can change from minute to minute. That's the beauty in being present. But the point is that you do need to be impeccable about, our relationship now needs to change because my perspective of you has changed. Because my opinion of you has changed. This thing has happened. This is the consequence. And I don't want to hold it over your head for the rest of our lives. I don't want to be thinking about this every time. Anything triggers this memory.
Also, be clear, we're not telling you to throw people away.
Right.
When we say disengage, that might be for the moment, so you can get your head right and forgive or find center. Right.
Yeah. And then other times it might mean,
and then other times it might be just
I can't continue. Right. I need to move on, and maybe you can pick back up later if you're both in a place to do that. But like with friendships and stuff like that, if you're abusive, sometimes you need to release, and then maybe we can come back together. Maybe we can't, So let us know what you guys think in the comments. Please share like you've been doing, and we'll see you next week.